This video is for all those who are taking our Emotionally Healthy Christianity class. And our first class was on viewing your story in view of God's story. And so I want to just maybe ask the question and encourage you to comment below. What did you get out of the class? What did you learn? What did you think about? What do you still have questions about? Last night's class was about looking at your own story, those expectations that you have, that maybe you had these expectations that your life was going to go up and to the right. If you would draw it on a line graph, go up and to the right. But reality is that you've had loss, you've had suffering, you've maybe lost loved ones, maybe you've had other kinds of brokenness in your life. Some of it was caused by you, some of it just happened to you. And so now you find yourself in this state of stress, of depression maybe, of sadness, of worry, of anxiety, because you look back and your life is not up to the right. Your life is down, up, down, 2 steps back, 5 steps forward, all over the place is how life actually works out. And so we talked about looking at your story in view of God's story. And God's story begins in God's good creation, where God makes everything good, and then human beings take the place of God. They, instead of humbly accepting their place in creation and loving God above all things, letting Him decide what's right and wrong, humans take the place of God. And not only do humans break, but the whole world breaks. And now you have disease and death and pain and suffering and all sorts of things that keep our world and our life going up and to the right. Keep us from having this relationship with each other that's one of vulnerability and openness, like Adam and Eve enjoyed for a while, where they were naked and without shame. And now instead we hide from each other. We're afraid of each other. We're ashamed of our past. We're sad about the things that have happened to us. And then we look into the future and we are afraid of what is to come. And yet God promised Adam and Eve that He was going to enter into the world and crush the work of the devil, death itself and all of sin, live for us, die for us, and be raised to life for us. So all this guilt and shame has been paid for on the cross. But not only that, Jesus rose from the dead with scars in His hand to prove that what happened to Him on the cross, taking on our sin, has been used to redeem us, to save us from our sins. And not only did He raise from the dead, He ascended to heaven, and He said He's coming back again to resurrect the world, to make a renewed world. We're not just looking forward to going up to heaven someday. We're looking, according to Revelation 21:22, according to the Isaiah 65:66, according to 2 Peter chapter 3, we're looking forward to the day when God comes down, heaven comes down to earth. God resurrects our bodies, and He makes all these things that happened in our story, like those scars in Jesus' hand, used for redemption. Now, in the middle of that, we don't know why all of it happened, why God let this happen and that happen. We can't change the past, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future. But when we look at our lives in view of God's story, we at least have categories. When things are going well, we can remember that this is a good creation, that God originally created good. When things aren't going well, when we have pain and sickness and death, when we screw up or stuff happens in our life, we can say that gives evidence that this world is fallen, that it's not the way it's supposed to be. And yet God came into the world to forgive those sins. And then when we look at things like things that we just can't change. We can't change that a loved one died. We can't change that we still have scars from abuse. We can't change some of these very hard things. Then we look forward saying, well, I can't change them all, but I know one day Jesus is going to come back and use it all. He's going to resurrect it all. And so I know how this story ends. And right now I can live in the present moment with hope. And that's what we talked about more than anything, that to be an emotionally healthy Christian is somebody that doesn't lose hope, somebody who can be at peace in the moment, someone who can be fully alive in the moment and not ruminating over the past not fixating in the past, somebody who's been able to process the past. And that might take years and counseling and all this help, but that's what you want to get to, where you look back on the past and you are, you know that God has been with you. God has forgiven your past. He's going to transform the past, all those things, even if you don't understand the past. So you're not stuck in the past, nor are you churning over and over again, like Jesus says, being worried about tomorrow. For tomorrow will have enough trouble its own. He says, don't worry about tomorrow. But you're living right now in the present, because you've put things into those categories of creation, fall, redemption, and new creation. So hopefully that helped. And that's going to, again, be a long process, but that's a start in becoming an emotionally healthy Christian. You're never going to be perfect this side of God's new creation, but hopefully that will allow you to at least start to make sense of our lives that have gone through so much trauma and so much pain. This next class is going to be on facing our own unique spiritual and emotional battles. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is to find your enneagram number, and I'm like you to think a little bit about your family history. And I'm going to put a link in the notes here to kind of help you do those two things. The enneagram is just one of the personality tools that can kind of show you where your strength is, what kind of your personality, what motivates you. That's basically what it does. What motivates you, and there's lots of good things in that, but also when you become unhealthy, how that your own unique personality is where your chink in the armor is, where your cross is, where you will probably go into some kind of sin when you're unhealthy emotionally and spiritually. And so I'll talk more about that, but find your enneagram number by taking an enneagram test, by looking at some different materials, and I'll help you find that. And then also look at your family history, and I'll give you some documents how to do that. And here's the reason. I'll give you a couple explanations. First of all, one of the reasons is, maybe tell you this story. I have a yellow Labrador retriever, and she's about 1 year old, and she is who she is because of nature and nurture. Because she's a yellow lab retriever, I don't have to do too much to teach her how to retrieve. You know, she's got tons of energy. That's how she was designed. That's her nature. And so I can just pick up a Frisbee and start throwing it, and she naturally retrieves. Like that's who she's been bred to be. It's her design. She's designed to run. She's designed with lots of energy. You don't use up that energy, she's going to start digging and chewing on things. That's how she's designed. And if if she doesn't get that energy out, she doesn't play fetch, yeah, she will chew up all these things in our house. And then there's also the nurture side of her, also things that's unique to her, our dog, her name's Scout, unique to Scout than other yellow labs because of how we've trained her. You know, we've trained her to sit on this mat when people ring the doorbell. And so sometimes other dogs would run to the door and attack the person or lick them, whatever. Our dog runs this mat. Now, other things that we've done that have not been good is, you know, she's starting to get in this habit of jumping up, and we've kind of allowed that too much. She also likes to jump up on our bed. Now, the reason I tell you that story is she is who she is because of nature and nurture, how she's designed and how we trained her. The thing that she can't do is she's not self-aware. She will predictably drink water wherever it is, in a bowl or in the toilet. And she's never like being self-aware thinking, you know, maybe I shouldn't be drinking out of this toilet. So she doesn't have that gift of self-awareness. That's the unique thing that we have as human beings. So when we learn about our nature and nurture, when we learn about, you know, our unique personality, how we're wired maybe to be a perfectionist. We're wired to be somebody who helps people. These are enneagram numbers. That's a 1 and a 2. Number 3, we're wired to be successful and to be to be a driver. We're wired to be really deeply emotional. And number 4, maybe you're wired to investigate and mitigate energy, number 5. You'll find out what these are if you're not used to it. But so something about our wiring is who we are. And then we're also wired how we were raised. Family of origin, like how our families from generations have been have patterns and passed down certain traditions and ways you deal with anger or frustration. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, the difference is we have self-awareness, or at least you can cultivate that. You can say, all right, I know this is my unique personality, and when I get unhealthy, this is the kind of person I become, and I need to face it. And that's exactly what God tells Cain and basically the second story of the Bible, where Cain gets envious of his brother. He doesn't like that his brother seems to be getting more favor from God, and God tells him to be self-aware. He says, sin is crouching at your door, and you must rule over it, or it's going to really basically eat you alive. But instead of listening to what God said and being self-aware of what was going on, he gave into the sin and thought that the best way to get rid of his problem was not to deal with his tendencies and be self-aware and repent and change, but to get rid of his brother. Then the other piece of being self-aware, to kind of realize, we might do things, our reaction and predictable responses to certain situations are because that's what we learned. We learned from our parents, and they learned from their parents, and they learned from their great-grandparents. We see that in the Bible also. We see Abraham having a favorite son, Isaac, and Isaac having a favorite son, Jacob, and Jacob having a favorite son, Joseph, and Joseph having a favorite son as well. And this dysfunction of having a favorite son. Also, Abraham lied about his wife being a sister. Isaac lied about his wife being a sister. That some of these sins and dysfunctions are passed on. And some of these emotional dysfunctions that we have, or responses or issues that we have, are because of our nurture, how we've been raised. And we have to create some self-awareness. And so that's the whole point of this next class, is to understand our personal, spiritual, and emotional battle, being self-aware of it as we understand our unique wiring and personality and our upbringing. So I want to encourage you to prepare for that class. Take the enneagram tests that I'll give you information. Kind of think about your family tree and history. And please put in the comments below, what did you learn out of the first class? What did you learn about your story and view of God's story? What are you learning about emotional and spiritual health? What do you think that we need to keep thinking about? So tell me that. I want to hear from you. Okay, God bless you. We'll see you in our next class.